Follow Eastward Boats on a 500-mile Florida adventure. 2 anglers traveling 500 miles. From inshore to freshwater, out into the Gulf of Mexico, down to the Everglades, around the Keys, and back up the Atlantic coast. Follow the route tracked in real time by onboard GPS. Meet the captains who helped us plan, and ride along as we share the sights we saw and conditions we encountered on our 500-mile trip around the bottom half of Florida. Brought to you by Eastward Boats, Evinrude Outboards, Ray Marine Electronics, FLIR Thermal Imaging, Armstrong, Paramount Chemicals, TH Marine, Sea Oceanic Gear, Magic Tilt Trailers, and these other fine sponsors. Accommodations by Roland and Marianne Martin's Marina, Angler House Marina, and Port of the Islands. Our first leg of the trip, we're going to start right here at South Bend Ramp in Port St Lucie, and we're going to go all the way to Clewiston. We're going to cut through the North Fork of the St Lucie River, get into the Okeechobee Waterway. There's 3 locks we have to clear. Then we're going to cross a lake, and I'll show you how to do that. I mean, Okeechobee is a very, very big lake, and you need to cross it just as if you were out navigating offshore. Because there's buoys and stuff like that to guide you, but there's long stretches where there are no buoys, and you've got to stay in the channel because there's portions of the lake that are very shallow. When we get to Clewiston, we're going to stay at Roland and Marianne Martin's Marina. It's right there on the water. They've got a hotel, they've got a store, they've got a restaurant, they sell live bait, they have everything you need. They have fuel. That's going to be the first leg of the trip. Our trip starts out in Port St Lucie at the South Bend Ramp on the North Fork of the St Lucie River. It's a relatively new facility with wide ramps and floating docks. Using a series of waterproof charts, we planned our route to start in the St Lucie River and continue on into the Okeechobee Waterway. Right away we saw the importance of having a good GPS on board because the entrance to the St Lucie Canal was not well defined. The speed limit in this part of the canal is 30 miles an hour, and there's channel markers every so often to keep you on course. It wasn't long before we got to our first fixed bridge, which meant the St Lucie Lock was just beyond. If you've never entered a lock before, it can be a little intimidating, but it's really pretty easy. Just remember, don't enter the lock while the signal is still blinking red. The lock attendant will guide you through and hand ropes down so you can hold position. Once all the vessels are inside the lock, the doors behind you will slowly close. To raise the water level in the locks, the front doors will start to slowly open, which will allow water to start pouring in. But don't worry, it's not a violent process, and the water will start to rise very, very slowly. Hold your boat's position using the ropes handed down by the attendant earlier, and it's not a good idea to cleat the boat off. Better yet, just take up the slack in the rope as the boat rises with the rising water level. We asked the attendant at the St Lucie locks about the amount of water that passes through the lock in one cycle, and he said it's right at 1 million gallons. Once the water inside the lock equalizes with the water level on the outside of the lock, the gates will fully open and the attendant will motion you through. Just west of the St Lucie locks, there's a recreational area called Phipps Park. It's a really nice facility. They've got a boat ramp, they have dockage for larger vessels, they have outdoor pavilions for picnics, and they have camping for motorhomes, travel trailers, and even tents. Once we cleared the no-wake area, we were soon back underway. Running the Okeechobee Waterway, you may encounter other large vessels that may not be that courteous, so be mindful of their large wake. On the western edge of Martin County, along the Okeechobee Waterway, is Timber Powers Park. It also has a boat ramp, has a playground for the kids, and picnic areas. Running the Okeechobee Waterway, you always want to be mindful of floating objects in the water. A log like this could take out a lower unit. When running the waterway, it's also a good idea to stay in the middle of the channel. The shoreline is lined with rocks and big boulders. Arriving at the train trestle let us know that we were approaching our final lock at Port Mayaca before entering Lake Okeechobee. Through our entire route, we were able to scroll ahead on our Raymarine GPS to always have a sense of what was ahead. When we reached the lock at Port Mayaca, the water level in Lake Okeechobee was the same as the Okeechobee Waterway, so we were able to pass through the lock non-stop. Crossing Lake Okeechobee is pretty straightforward. Just be sure to plan your route using the channel markers, because there are areas of the lake that gets very shallow. Here's where following your GPS is very important to be sure that you always stay in the channel. There were portions of our route crossing the lake that were not as well defined as this. On this day, crossing the lake was relatively uneventful. The lake was calm, and we found ourselves on the western shore in no time. Arriving at the Clewiston locks signified we had reached the western shore of the lake. Typically they remain open, and just on the other side is Roland and Marianne Martin's marina. As we pulled up to the dock, smells coming from the tiki bar told us it was time for lunch, so we thought we'd grab a quick bite before heading out for fishing that afternoon. One last stop before heading back out was at Roland and Marianne Martin's Marine Center. We talked with a local guide, and he gave us a few tips on which lures the fish were biting on. Plus, I wanted to pick up some crickets to see if we could get into a little brim action. Back on the water, we had a short run down the rim canal to the area that we decided to fish that afternoon. Well, it didn't take very long for Skip to score the first bass of the day using a DOA black grape shad 8-inch worm. With the sun being high in the sky, we decided to fish the shade of the lily pads, and it turned out to be a solid pattern. I decided to go with a 5-inch curly-tail worm that seemed to be equally effective. The area of the rim canal that we were fishing was wherever we could find a break in the levee that led to the opening of a small bay. Once inside the bay, we just looked for the lily pad fields. It's not like these spots were secret. Anyone following our progress with Atlas tracks knew exactly where we were the whole time. Oh, remember those crickets we bought? Well, they work too. The brim fishing in the rim canal is great. Now let me tell you more about our destination in Clewiston, Roland and Marianne Martin's Marina and Resort. Established back in 1981, Roland and Marianne Martin's Marina and Resort now consists of condominiums, a motel, an RV park, a restaurant, and the tiki bar that serves lunch and has nighttime entertainment. Located on the southwest corner of Lake Okeechobee, just inside the Clewiston Lock, the facility includes a ship store, a full-service marina, guide service, and a marine center. For more information, call 800-473-6766 or go to RolandMartinMarina.com. Be sure to check out our next segment where we run from Clewiston to Fort Myers.